All right, let's dive into something governments seem to love to do, fiddling with prices. Things like minimum wage laws or rent control. Now, these policies almost always start with the best intentions, but what really happens when the official price for something just doesn't line up with what people are actually willing to pay? Well, we're about to find out.
So it all really comes down to this, right? Why do governments feel the need to step in and control prices? They often say it's to protect people, consumers, workers. But the bigger question is, what are the real consequences when they do? Not just the obvious ones, but all the ripple effects that are much, much harder to see.
Okay, so when we say fiddling with prices, what we're really talking about is any kind of government interference in the market. For this explainer, we're going to zero in on the two big ones, price floors and price ceilings.
Let's just get the definitions out of the way real quick. A price floor. Think of it as the floor you're standing on. You can't go any lower. It's a legal minimum price. And a price ceiling is the opposite. You can't go any higher. It's a legal maximum. Now, the best way to really get how these work is to walk through a couple of quick stories. So let's start with a price floor. And to do that, let's imagine a government proposal that, on the surface, sounds like it's designed to help the little guy, the struggling companies in our economy.
The idea sounds pretty simple, right? Let's say you've got a company and its stock is only trading for, say, $3 a share. The government steps in and passes a law. From now on, it is illegal to trade that stock for less than $10. The goal? To boost that company's value, help it grow. Sounds fantastic, but there is a massive, fundamental problem.
And this gets to the absolute heart of the matter. Just think about it for a second. If I was only willing to pay $5 for that stock yesterday, why on earth would I suddenly be willing to pay $10 for the exact same thing today just because a new law exists? A law can't magically change what something is worth to me, the buyer. And when you ignore that simple fact, well, you get some pretty serious unseen consequences. So what happens? Well, those stocks that were trading below $10 don't magically shoot up in value. No. They just stop trading. Poof, no one buys them. The very companies this law was supposed to help are now totally cut off from raising any money. So who wins? Well, the big established companies already trading above $10, suddenly a whole chunk of their competition is just gone. And this is where the analogy really clicks into place. Just swap out the words. Instead of low-priced stocks, think low-wage workers. Instead of investors who won't buy, think employers who won't hire. You see the economic argument here against the minimum wage. An employer is only going to pay what they believe that labor is worth to their business. So if the government sets a price floor, a minimum wage, that's higher than that value, the result isn't always a higher paid worker. It can be an unhired worker. So the crucial takeaway from this line of thinking is this. When you set a price floor above what the market is willing to pay, you don't automatically lift everybody up. Instead, you run the very real risk of pricing the least experienced, the least skilled people, often the very ones you're trying to help, right out of the market. Okay, let's flip the script and talk about price ceilings. And for this, we're going to use another story, one that a lot of us can probably relate to. Imagine a massive snowstorm hits, and you are desperately, desperately in need of a snowplow. You're totally snowed in. A plow driver finally comes by and quotes you some insane, astronomical price. Your gut reaction is probably, that's price gouging, some greedy person taking advantage of a bad situation. But is that the whole story? What are the unseen effects of that super high price? Well, think about this. That potential for a huge payday during a storm is the only reason that plow operator bothered to maintain his expensive truck through years and years of mild winters. That high price is the incentive that encourages people to stockpile things like generators, plywood, and batteries before an emergency ever hits. Without the promise of that potential profit, those reserves, they just might not exist at all. So if you put a cap on the price someone can charge during a crisis, you're also taking away their reason to prepare for that crisis in the first place. You might actually be making the next emergency even worse because those vital stockpiles of supplies simply won't be there when you need them. So if you use a price ceiling to hold a price artificially low and suddenly there isn't enough of that thing to go around, what happens next? Well, you get this really predictable but unwanted result, rationing. You see, in economics, the word shortage means something very specific. It's not just that something's rare. I mean, diamonds are rare, but there isn't a shortage of diamonds because the price is allowed to be really, really high. A shortage only happens when an artificially low price causes way more people to want something than is actually available. And this sets off a chain reaction. It's like dominoes. First, the government puts a price ceiling in place to keep something affordable. Step 2, that low price creates a shortage. And then, step 3, to deal with that shortage, the government has to step in again and start making up rules about who gets the limited supply.
And this can lead to some truly bizarre, almost comical rules. During one drought, New York City had a rule that you could only water your lawn on odd-numbered days, but only if you lived in an odd-numbered house. I mean, these kinds of bureaucratic rules are just such a blunt instrument. There's no way they can account for the millions of different needs people actually have. So what's the market's alternative? Well, it's simple. A rising price. A rising price is a powerful signal. It naturally tells people, hey, maybe stop using this for less important things, like watering your lawn. While at the same time, it's screaming to suppliers everywhere, hey, bring more of this stuff here, now. It solves the problem way more elegantly than any central plan ever could. Okay, for our last section, let's look at the other side of the coin, falling prices. You see those headlines all the time, right? A stock market crash wipes out trillions in wealth. But what is really going on there? So is that really true? When a market takes a nosedive, has all that wealth just vanished into thin air? Well, the economic viewpoint we're exploring today argues no, not at all. It says we're just confusing the price of things with actual wealth. What we see is obvious, right? People who own stocks lost money on paper. But there's an unseen effect. That wealth didn't just disappear. It was transferred. Think about it. The person who was holding cash is now suddenly wealthier. Their dollars can now buy way more stock, or more goods, or more services. The wealth simply moved from people holding assets to people holding cash. So here's the bottom line. Falling prices aren't the disease. They're just a symptom. They're the market's way of correcting a past mistake, a powerful signal that our values have changed. Trying to prop up prices and stop them from falling doesn't fix the problem. It just delays the inevitable and hides the truth. And that really leaves us with this final, powerful idea. Prices are messengers. They carry vital, up-to-the-minute information about what we as a society actually value right now. Forcing them to stay fixed in one place is like trying to navigate the world using yesterday's map. It might feel comfortable for a little while, but ultimately it just stops us from adapting to reality.